you can start.
So while Mel gets this set up, I just wanted to mention one thing, more about the Tanana Valley Farmers Market. I know there's families here with children in like the school age. Brad has organized and is running a once a month children's market. It's very successful. You have to contact Brad fairly early in the season if your child is interested, and it's been great. Everybody loves it, and it gives kids a chance to have their own space and sell whatever they're doing and make money. So
the children's market applications will be out on March 1st as well.
great.
Okay, I don't know where'd the controller go?
It's on the table. He's holding it.
Oh, you're holding it.
Kids, there's no limit. We've had teenagers, we've had 5-year-olds, like kids under 18.
Under 18, maybe over 4. We'll be on the website, tvfma.com.
tvfmarket.com.
See how often I go to your website. tvfmarket.com, and you'll have the application forms both for that and then to be a regular vendor. All right. Okay, so now for something completely different. And do I do this or do you do this? Or
You can do it.
how do I do it?
Go press the right arrow.
This?
Yeah,
Okay, there we go. And where's the little red thingy?
it's the red line. That's the point.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Okay, so for something completely different, this is actually the farm that didn't happen. And it's been wonderful to see all the different farms that have happened, especially, you know, on short time scales, such as the Nanana project. So this is a completely different thing, and I'm presenting because we fell down the wetlands rabbit hole, like big time. And while right now it seems like that is not going to be a significant issue, I talked to the Coffees a bit. They said that the Army Corps of Engineers is having nothing to do with their project at Nanana. It can bite you. And so there's a lot of information on this slide, so I'm going to go through it pretty fast. I don't know if this can be made available to people
I
who
can-
would be
I can put
interested
it
in
up.
it.
Yeah.
So, you know, don't try to take everything in. I'm just gonna hit the highlights. I know we don't want to get to the mixer, and it's been a really long day, but awesome stuff. So just, I'm gonna hit the highlights and kind of tell you what happens if you do fall down that rabbit hole. So this was sold to us, this part in the orange, by the borough, directly from Fairbanks North Star Borough, as agricultural land. We bought it in December of 1984. It was presented in good terms, and I'm not faulting the borough. Wetlands was not on anybody's radar at that time. So in 1985, in the spring, we got that amount cleared. And there was a lot of clearing done in Delta at the time. So we had some people come up from Delta. They cleared it by 2 big bulldozers chained in between. So the chain knocks down all black spruce, and then they pushed windrows. And we got a nice letter from the Soil Conservation Service, who had not consulted us, but told us, in 3 years, you will be growing barley on this field. I'm like, sure, whatever. And we had actually just bought it as investment property. We owned it fee simple. There was no like mandates to do anything agricultural on it. The only thing was we couldn't subdivide. And it was 400 and some acres. So to locate it, the naughty shop is down here. Addison Air Force Base is about 3 miles up there. The borough put in IQ's Avenue, which stands for Airway Intercept Compatible Use Zone, which is, you know, kind of interesting. This was the runway survey line for the main runway at Eielson. And we pointed that out when our ACOE regulator wanted us to put in a big, like, wetlands mitigation pond area. That's really not a good idea. This is a final approach. We don't want a bunch of birds flying up. So next slide. So what we did eventually was we got the mandate against, there was a mandate against subdividing. We finally got that lifted. And then we wanted to subdivide so that we could make some of this property available. As you've heard for the last 2 days, we need more ag land. And Brian Scoresby, if you listen to him, we need hundreds of thousands of acres more ag land, or at least tens of thousands more acres. So we wanted to make this available. So we wanted to subdivide it. And to do that, we did a quick plat, but to do the quick plat, we had to go through the Army Corps of Engineers. It was the only way to do a quick plat. So that ended up with us falling down the rabbit hole of section 404, which it does not address pollutants like oil or other contaminants. It's strictly dredging and filling. So what that means, you can dig a hole in your property, you can dump that soil next to the hole, you have dredged and filled. And if the Corps thinks you have wetlands, then you have violated their laws and you can get in serious trouble because you have dredged and filled out of a wetland, which in their mind, anything that is permafrost is still considered wetlands. I verified this last week. So a lot of this was black spruce permafrost soils underlain by gravel. So if you clear it, as we cleared the 100 acres or so, then it thaws and drains and you don't have permafrost anymore and you have soil. But you can't clear it because it's permafrost. Luckily, we got the 100 acres cleared right away. So any of these activities, the Corps will consider to be something that is jurisdictional if they think the property has wetlands on it, which would be a lot of black spruce permafrost. There is farming exemptions, and people are probably aware of those. They only apply to already developed existing farmland. They do not apply to developing new farmland. So that's that, and I just wanted to point out, whoops. So you're actually literally dealing with the Army, because that signature is the Assistant Secretary of the Army. So you're dealing with military. So here's our criteria: jurisdictional WOTUS, like floaters or POTUS. WOTUS is waters of the United States. And originally, pretty much anything that was considered part of a significant nexus or a signex would be considered jurisdictional because they were looking at the entire watershed, basically. So if something you did on your little patch would affect the entire watershed farther downstream, then they had jurisdiction and they could check it out. There is an interesting, I came across this when I was researching. This was an interesting lawsuit that did not, it's been somewhat settled, but that lawsuit involved suing the Army Corps of Engineers for designating permafrost soils as wetland. So that's, you can look that up if you're interested. It's pretty fascinating if you're into this stuff. So. Is this one battery maybe?
Maybe. Oh, it's because, I know, yeah. Okay, try it now.
Right. Okay, so this is the definition of the significant nexus. It exists if the water body, alone or in combination, significantly affects the chemical, physical, or biological integrity of basically the watershed. So I'm not sure why that got cut off, but so according to the Army Corps of Engineers, when we wanted to subdivide, we had to make accommodations for their assuming that this land was jurisdictional. They do not have to prove it. The burden of proof is on the person who owns it. So this is what we were supposed to do. Page 223 of 253 of the operational draft of the guidebook for reference-based assessment of the functions of precipitation driven wetlands on discontinuous permafrost in interior Alaska. So there you go. So we were supposed to do 100-foot transects on a 40-acre parcel. And we were supposed to record the number of strata. I mean, there was 7 pages of instructions and all this documentation, all this stuff. And then anywhere that the vegetation indicated it might be possibly a wetland vegetation, we had to do sample holes and record all that. And if we couldn't do that. We were busy in town doing, haying and running a business and raising kids and stuff. If we had paid someone to do that, I cannot imagine how much it would have cost. So I protested. I said, you have not proved that this is jurisdictional, but they said, oh, we don't have to. So that went on for a while. And finally they did cough up Oops, they coughed up a nice little map that he just went to Google Earth and drew some lines. So, we just decided we were gonna stay away from all of that. However, the rest of the parcel down here, we still couldn't touch any of that. That was permafrost, it had not been cleared, we could not touch it. We were told, and that was what we wanted to sell. We were keeping this property and this property. We were allowed to call this part of converted cropland because it had blueberries on it. But we wanted to get some gravel house out of this property so that we could build our roads. And we got shut down on that, so, so eventually we were able to push through like a brushed out access here. Our regulator thought, oh, you did that on track B, we're gonna, fine you and stuff. Said, no, we did that on the prior converted croplands, which you don't have jurisdiction over, but we do need permission to do a little clearing here because we knew there was gravel and we wanted to access it. So when you end up in a jurisdictional situation, it's not just the Army Corps and the EPA that you work with. So why do we have a picture of this? Because the Fish and Wildlife Service was also notified of our intent. And if you look at this, there's a Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act. This is the thing. So on April 8th, this letter went out to a bunch of people. Notice it did not go to us. We were the property owners. We were the ones. It went to all of these people. We didn't know anything about it. We were planning to do our clearing in May after we got back from our daughter's graduation from medical school and the ground had thawed and so forth. That wasn't going to happen. We could not possibly clear prior to, after May 1st or prior, and then after July 15th, which was way too late for our purposes. And we didn't know anything about this. And our Army Corps person just randomly managed to get us a copy of the letter. And that was like the third week of July, of April. So there we are. And it was just, we had to scramble. We did get it like cleared. The snow melted enough that we could push the trail in. But he did not trust us. And I had to walk behind the bulldozer to show that at this time of year when the snow is settled and the ground is frozen, you're not going to do any damage. A big dozer, but it only made tracks about that deep. And I had to text those pictures to him or he would have shut us down right then. So it's this whole like cycle of stuff. And then also DNR got in on the act. This is where you say, but wait, there's more. And of course there was more. And at one point, we were contacted by DNR who accused us of conspiring with the borough to rezone the little relatively permanent waterway on the property to an outdoor space buffer zone to protect it. But in the DNR's view, we were preventing public access on a waterway. And we were supposed to allow motorized public access. And so it was like such a rabbit hole. So I was looking, so hopefully the Nanatochacket people do not run into serious situations, but there's the potential. And regulators, if they have the opportunity, they're going to regulate. And they're not very happy with how things have happened since the recent Supreme Court ruling about the Sackett case, which has kind of shut them down, but they're kind of ignoring it. So this is from and I'm glad the copies have been doing great. This is from the Nanatochacket information for prospective buyers. So if you notice, it says the usual dredged and filled. Purchasers must obtain a permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So my question is, why didn't the state of Alaska, since it was doing this whole land dispersal, why didn't they deal with this prior to making the land available? Because innocent farmers shouldn't have to deal with this stuff. It's ridiculous. It took me 3 years of my life. I took wetlands classes. I read court cases till my eyes bled. And here it is, purchasers must obtain the permit. And people don't know what that means unless they have, like, been through the system. So, there's our tract compared to the Nenana Ag. This was the little creek that DNR said, oh, you have to allow motorized vehicles along that. And we had conspired with the borough to not allow that. And that took a whole nother little rabbit hole event. So this tells about the individual permits. And then, why is the US Army involved in regulating farmland development? And it does state that wetland, here it says again, wetlands may require a permit from the US Army Corps of Engineers. So they have a new online site where you can learn all about their programs and you can apply for a permit. Isn't that wonderful? This just happened. So I went there because I thought, well, I gotta stay up to date and see what I can present that's really, really current. And so it has a nice little entry. And then you get to this screen, after you click on the, whatever, you get to this screen, which says, you have to consent to the United States government inspecting and seizing data stored on your information system if you want to access this site and do your permitting work online. And they did not have a disagree button. They only had an agree button. I disagreed, so I did not get any farther into that site because I did not understand why your personal computer you're using at home to try to figure out what the regulations are would suddenly be considered something that the United States government may inspect and seize data stored on, because they consider it an information system, which includes any device attached to this information system, which would be your computer or your cell phone or whatever you're using. So I did not agree. So yeah, it just is, and this is current information right here. So also, so people might think, well, I'll just blow it off. I'm not gonna contact the Army Corps. Hopefully they won't notice what I'm doing and everything will be fine. Well, they also have this nice little enforcement and compliance history online, AKA ECHO website, where you can anonymously report your neighbors or whoever you want to report for violating any of what you didn't get into when you didn't agree to your computer being. And that might seem far-fetched, but it does happen. And specifically in the Nenana-Tochakit situation, I know there are certain entities that are not happy with what is going on down there. So, politics make strange bedfellows, and you never know what's going to transpire that is like one of the unknown unknowns. So this is everything that they can do to you. And just on the basis of an anonymous, report. And this is what actually happened to the Sacketts. And this is an important legal case because it went to the Supreme Court not once but twice. And it was, the most recent settlement was in 2023, so it's pretty recent. So it started back in 2007. They wanted to build on this piece of property. They hauled in a considerable amount of fill. The neighbor turned them in. So work was halted. The Corps was going to require them to remove all of their fill, replant the whole 6.63 acre parcel in the original type of native plants, fence it off so it couldn't be disturbed, monitor it for 3 years, and then they could apply for a permit. So the Sacketts were like, no, we're not doing that. And the court turned around and said, well, we can do cumulative fines. Now, 75,000 a day might have been excessive. I've seen anything from 32,500 a day on up, but it was cumulative. So eventually the case wound its way to the Supreme Court. And in 2012, the Supreme Court ruled in their favor. But that was not to say they could build on their property. It was to say that they had a right to contest the order. That was the only thing that Supreme Court judgment said. So they went back to the drawing board, and in 2023, so how many years is that? That is 11 years. The Supreme Court decided unanimously that the EPA and the ECO, we had overstepped. But to my knowledge, the Sagas did not get any financial or other compensation for their total of 16 years. The Pacific Legal Foundation took them on pro bono. They tend to do that kind of thing. But they went broke. The Sackets went broke. I don't think they've still built a house there. But now they can. So all they need is a nice loan that the house is going to cost 3 times as much as it would have in 2007. So that was a really important decision because they're saying what the Supreme Court said was you can no longer claim like a significant nexus connection, which is what we were being regulated under. And it has to be continuous surface connection from any wetland to a more, normal body of water for it to be considered jurisdictional. But of course, the Corps is pushing back. So they have all these rules. Right now, they have 2 different rules going on for 2 different chunks of the country, depending on which chunk of the country you're in. We're in the pre-2015 regulatory regime here. They did say that the agencies will interpret, we really proofread here, the phrase waters of the United States consistent with the Supreme Court's decision in Sackett. But they are finessing. When I contacted people in Anchorage about this, they did give a response. Nobody signed their name. None of the core people wanted their names signed to the response, and they were totally finessing the situation. I probably might go on time.
Oh, that was just me coughing. You're okay. You got a couple more minutes.
Okay, so that's where we're standing right now, and if anybody does want to follow the Corps, they should totally, get a little bit up to speed and stand on their rights, because that's the only way that you can have any traction with them. And so I just kept saying back in 2013 or so, well, we really don't think you have made the case that this parcel is jurisdictional wetlands. And it took 3.5 years, but finally I got the brown envelope from the Corps, and it said, well, just don't block the culverts going under this avenue that of the IQs that the borough put in, and we'll call it good.
Wow.
After everything they had told us to do, that would have cost, so much money. That was the denouement. So, but still we have the rest of the property to deal with, and this we plan to keep, but we are interested in finding homes for the rest of this property, and hopefully the current decision will allow us to move forward on making that property available. It is good soils, there is some gravel, there's good soils. Obviously there is the waterway. There's good access down here at Cleveland, and there's power at Cleveland. But if their position is still going to be that all permafrost soils are wetlands and jurisdictional, then I'll have to go back to battle. So just to show you, it's all military, and it's just really challenging to try to move through the military system when you're a civilian and you're just a person. You're not some huge company that has their people talk to their people and everybody's making a lot of money. Just doesn't work that way. So stay tuned, because now they have to review everything in March of this year, March 27th. So I just came across that. And so why is that so important, especially to me, that we have more access to farmland? We've been talking about it this whole 2 days. I'm one of those climate change alarmists. And I really do think we're only at the beginning of what we're going to be getting into in terms of dramatic climate shifts from what we have seen. And we've seen these huge heavy rains. We've seen 40 below yesterday, 10 above. We've seen apocalypses of ice. It's just becoming really variable, as Tom Zimmer, whoops, here's my scary slide. As Tom Zimmer said, from Calypso Farm, the instability of the climate is probably making it more difficult to farm. And I have to agree with him, and John is not his head.
My head, 100%.
Yeah, so we've all seen these, kind of maps. Alaska is not all that hot in this map, but look at Canada, northern Canada, the Arctic Ocean, and especially Siberia. And that was November of 2024, compared to the average. And then we have the CO2. So I read Earth in the Balance when it first came out in about 1991, and CO2 was about 355 parts per million. And in that book, Al Gore talks about what he named climate change lag time. And that is the distance in time between when greenhouse gases go into the atmosphere and when their effects begin to manifest. And at that time, he estimated the lag time to be on the order of 30 to 40 years. That lag time is closing as the oceans come to heat capacity and more ice is going to melt, more Arctic ice, Antarctic ice, and we're seeing all those headlines, you know, record low ice levels. But what that also means is that we're not seeing the effects of what has gone into the atmosphere since, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, maybe here. And look at that curve still going up.
Going up and up and up.
And it's in the pipeline. Unless we have an asteroid hit us or a supervolcano erupt that really cools off the planet, we are going to see a lot more change in the very near future, and it's going to be dramatic. So, one of the agricultural tactics that interest me was originally found in the Lake Titicaca Basin way up in the Andes, and this is how potatoes were originally growing up there. They made raised beds, and then they made channels from the lake, and they filled those channels with water. And since it's a very high desert environment, you get hot days, but you get very cold nights all year. And so this protected the plants because the water would soak up the heat during the day, and then it would release the heat at night and would protect your plants. And this is being resurrected as a farming technique. It helps moderate heavy rainfalls because the rain will go into the canals, and it helps the soil stay drier in heavy rainfalls. And when you have big droughts, you have a water source right there. So this is a pretty recent development of this kind. And to me, it's very exciting. Now, this would probably give the Army Corps of Engineers conniption fits because you're trenching, you're dredging and filling. But this is a modern version of this kind of raised bed irrigation system. And for properties like we had done at Isleson, where we do have a high water table, but we also have good soils, there's a lot of that kind of property in interior Alaska, and I think it's kind of an exciting technique that could certainly at least be trialed by the university or somebody like that. So I just had to close with this ridiculous government speak. And this is from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The pervasiveness of inertia and the possibility of irreversibility in the interacting climate, ecological, and socioeconomic systems are major reasons why anticipatory adaptation and mitigation actions are beneficial. A number of opportunities to exercise adaptation and mitigation options may be lost if action is feeling. And you know, let's put that like in English for people like us. So I would just like to thank you. This might be like 150 years from now, down on IQ's Avenue, and of course, the left brain part is over here on the right. That's so, thank you very much. If anybody does access this slideshow, I did add the addendums of the responses to my questions, which I sent, and it took me almost 3 weeks to get a response from the unnamed people. So I asked about, you know, are they helping people with farm purchases? And this was the regulatory, and then especially the number 4, here's the permafrost soils. Do ACOE personnel work with other agencies? No, but we're open to working with other agencies. Maybe, not people, just agencies. So if you get to that end of it, to flew through the rest of the slideshow, if you're looking at it and going, you might want to check out those questions and responses. The questions are mine, the responses were the unnamed persons at J Bear in Anchorage, because they've all sequestered themselves on Fort Wainwright and J Bear. You can't go to their offices anymore. So hopefully stay off of their radar. And if you buy land from the state, ask the state why they are not dealing with this in advance of you purchasing the property. Personally, I would not purchase property unless I had assurances from the state that they can dealt.
Good advice, after what you've been through.
Thank you very much.
Very good advice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. Wow. That was, you, wait, here. Oh, you've been, so, wow. Did you,
So my question is, so for you, what, because like there's different organizations. The question I get is, what would be a solution on something that you would like to see, something that could be changed legislatively? That would make it not just radical if you have.
so what's the change legislatively that you would like, that you would see?
Right, what would we like to change legislatively? Well, in about 2013, the ADEC, Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, actually got grant money to look into them being the regulatory agency for this type, for wetlands in the state of Alaska. They did a big study. It went nowhere. I'm sure the Army Corps did not want to see it go anywhere. But it was a thing. And that was, you know, they did a whole thing. You can look it up. So long term, I would say the state needs to take over jurisdiction of at least agricultural lands and put the Army away, you know, they should be out there digging potatoes or something. But
Army Corps of Engineers to a different